Hi, I'm Bob Butler from KCBS Radio. Welcome to a forum where we'll be discussing Measure L, a ballot initiative that voters in the city of Brentwood will consider during a special election this November. Now, L requires a majority vote for approval. It asks Brentwood residents if they are willing to extend 815 acres of the city's western border to allow for new development of residential homes, commercial, and civic uses. It will qualify for the ballot by a signed petition. The area in question is bounded by Balfour Road, Deer Valley Road, the city of Antioch, and the Shadow Lake subdivision. As part of the Measure L, up to 2,400 homes could be built, with at least 80% of those homes set for those 55 and over. L would also set aside at least 225 acres of open space and 15 acres of community recreation area. It limits commercial and civic development to 20 acres in the southwestern corner. Now, uses could include an outdoor amphitheater, wineries, hotels, nurseries, and agricultural uses. Measure L would also extend American Avenue to intersect Balfour Road at a second location and would widen the road. Today's forum is sponsored by the Contra Costa County Clerk, Recorder, and Registrar of Voters, League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley, and West Contra Costa. We're recording these roundtables here in the studio of Contra Costa Television. Today's speakers are Annette Beckstrand, a former Brentwood City Councilwoman who will be supporting Measure L, and Kathy Griffin, representing the group Brentwood Alliance Against Measure L, who's speaking in opposition. We do lots before the show to determine the speaking order, so we'll begin with Ms. Beckstrand. Why do you support Measure L?
I support Measure L because it restores back to Brentwood what was once taken away in opportunities to complete our development, to complete our tax base. This measure itself brings just hundreds of millions of dollars to our schools, to roadway improvements, safety, fire improvements, and a lot of other amenities that will make Brentwood a better place and kind of finish out some areas that got taken away from us several years ago when the urban limit line was drawn in around this area to begin with.
So, Kathy Griffin, you don't think this is a great idea?
No, I don't. The city of Brentwood has internal challenges right now. It is our position that we have no business expanding our urban limit line with the current challenges we have. We have 1 in 10 of our workers don't have jobs in our city. 88% of our commuters clog the freeways every day to find viable work. We have fire and emergency services at a dire level. And we don't think expanding outward is the answer to our challenges within. And we're holding the urban limit line because that is our defense for unplanned sprawl and unplanned development when Brentwood has so much already planned within our city limits. We have to see how those plans, our community build-out plan, plays out before we extend outward for any reason.
You mentioned fire services. I noticed that this measure will give something like $2.5 million for fire services. And I know East Contra Costa County, we've been having a hard time keeping fire stations open. This would open a fire station, I understand. Is that right?
Well, yes. The $2 million is the regular development fees that all development in Brentwood pays. That's kind of offset, to tell you the truth, by the $2 million that this actual project will cost the city of Brentwood. Nobody's talking about the actual cost to public works, safety, city management, all the things that were outlined in the 9212 report. There is cost associated to the city with this development. Yes, they did just pony up actually $11 million for the fire service altogether. But the fact remains is we have shuttered fire stations. We have 3 operating fire stations. We're supposed to have 9. And this funding that they just secured last Wednesday night actually funds Station 10 based on their development's size. So we have to remember, we have no funding to reopen 4, 5, and 6, and we have no funding for 7, 8, and 9.
Annette, it sounds like a problem.
Well, it can be if you don't have all of the information. Just to address the point about cost to the city, there's always a cost to the city when there's projects in front of the city, but there's actually a net fiscal profit to the city of $16.3 million in new property taxes to offset the impact on city staff, not to mention that every time a building permit is pulled, it has fees tied to it that go back and pay for those services. It was years ago when I was on the city council and vice mayor that we put into our building fees not only the roadway fees and fire and safety fees and school fees, but we put in the impact fees so that when a builder came to the city to build a home, their fees they pay to pull that building permit pay for the staff time, the office time, X number of phones and assistants and so on and so forth. So that's actually built into what will be happening. And so it's not going to be just this funnel of money leaving and impact against, but actually a net profit for the city.
Let's talk about quality of life. I mean, that area we're talking about, I'm familiar with it near Heritage High School, right?
Yes.
And they're going to widen that road, but they're going to bring it back around to Balfour?
Yes, it's going to be a loop. American Avenue was caught up in the initial drawing in of the urban limit line when the County Board of Supervisors unilaterally drew that in and took away land and property that had been in Brentwood's sphere of influence for decades. That area had always been planned for, if it developed, those kids in those areas would go to these schools. There was a plan to have that road go all the way through because no one ever wants their child at a campus that has only one way in and one way out. Think of the safety things there. I can list stories in the news, and you can too, why that's a bad idea. And the county, knowing this, drew that line in anyway and made an island out of these schools. And in 2008, the city and the school districts came together and did a task force to talk about the safety for those schools. The bottom line of that was monies and things that they would put in together to do different phases of roadway improvements, safety improvements. And in that report that was adopted by current Brentwood Union School District members, Geddes and Sanabria and Liberty Union, Volta and Mendrick, and then current council member Eric Stonebarger, who is now on the Liberty School Board, they all voted and acknowledged that when these lands were brought back into the urban limit line, that would finally be the solution to finishing that American Avenue loop and widening Balfour to that loop as part of the safety improvements for that. So absolutely, American Avenue will go around the schools and back out to Balfour Road to the west of where it currently is, for circulation, for safety, for all of those reasons that task force in 2008, both the Brentwood Union School District, the Liberty Union High School District, and the city councils adopted unanimously, and it states it's tied to these properties coming in. Well, 11 years later, and they speculated it might be 3 to 4 years-ish. 11 years later, we're still waiting. This is that answer.
So, Kathy, the issue with the schools in Brentwood, I understand, is a major concern for the organization.
Right.
We're talking about 2,400 homes, 80% would be seniors, right next to Shadow Lakes. So do we need that much senior housing?
No, no we don't. Brentwood has 3,113 active over 55-year-old housing units right now, and we're poised to build another 299. So, and then we have Antioch up in the Sand Creek focus area near Kaiser, poised to break ground on their first large-scale 55 and over active adult community, and also the Albers project of about 300. We also have units for sale as well. And to me, that is a very good opportunity for over 55 housing as we have today. Regarding the school, the completion of American Avenue, I just have to add that we did talk to Eric Volta, the superintendent of Liberty Union High School District, who so indicated that to extend American Avenue, in his words, would neither help nor hurt the schools because you are not reducing the sheer number of vehicles that come and go to those schools on a daily basis. To put them further down west on Balfour, when about 85% of the cars leaving those schools go east and north of the school, is not helpful and also will further exacerbate the traffic along Balfour Road. This development in the traffic study has proposed 3 roundabouts to miraculously move the traffic down Balfour Road. But in so doing, they are adding, and this is a total build out, over 14,000 daily car trips to the area, of which about 6,900 or more are attributed to the over 55 active adults.
Roundabouts on Balfour?
Yes.
How's that going to work?
I don't know, everyone's doing them everywhere. It took me a long time to get used to them because I experienced them on the East Coast and didn't really love them. But it does get the traffic flowing in areas where it just needs to be a little more controlled and everybody needs to know who is where versus stopping traffic for heavy north, south, east, west type traffic. And so, but this is, again, these are about safety things. This is about safety access to our campuses in the event of disastrous emergencies. Parents still choose to drive their children to school, and I won't get into that, but we're not going to solve the parents and the traffic issues simply through things like this. We're trying to part of that task force that Mr. Volta was part of and did vote in favor of at that time, so I'm not sure why he has come back later and just wants to talk about traffic jams instead of student safety. But part of that just, laid this out as safety measures based on, I mean, if I have to say it, Columbine and other situations where we don't have access to those campuses to take care of the needs of those children in the event of several different kinds of disasters that could occur. And with that road being done for those safety reasons, it will help traffic. That project is slated at max, at 20-year build-out, to dump less than 300 students into the overall school system over those 20 years.
Wait.
And so it's not even going to add students to that and compound the traffic on American Avenue in that sense. So adding to that circulation, adding more ins and outs, everybody knows that always assists in traffic flow.
But you've said almost 300 students into the school system. You're going to have 480 homes, which are going to be regular homes.
No, they're age restricted.
No,
Deed restricted 55 and older, and they cannot have
80,
children.
80%.
Yes.
But of the 20%, that's
Correct.
almost 500 homes.
And that is based on Brentwood's current analysis of students per home and the age demographic and the demographic of the last several years of families that move into Brentwood. And most of those families move in with their children starting in 2nd, 3rd grade, so on and so forth. This was a study done, it's in the 9212 report on the city's website under Measure L, that substantiates that this is not going to dump more than, it's estimated, 83 high school students, 155 K through 5, and 58 6th to 8th grade students over a period of 20 years total.
So the 480 homes, which are going to be market rate housing, and when people want to live in this area, are they going to be built 20 years from now, 5 years from now, if this is approved?
The market dictates those kinds of things. You asked earlier, can you sell that many senior housing? And the market, dictates and looks now as though it could, or why would they invest their money in that? I'm not a market analyst, so I can't answer those questions specifically with any validity, but with the idea being that 80% of those are deed restricted and no children, and the others will have children, but the stats, the studies, everything in California, everything in Brentwood shows that it's just not that many children.
You say no, you mean no school-age children for the senior housing?
Right. No,
Okay.
no school-age children
But I'm sure
in
they're
the
going to have
senior
kids
housing.
somewhere. They might
Right.
be older, they might be
Right.
grown.
But they cannot be living on the premises.
Okay. The one of the things that I always wonder about when you have a development like this, what does the developer get out of it? I mean, what kind of incentives is the city offering for a developer to build in this area?
Well, actually, there's a lot of people remaining neutral on this development. Our city council has chosen not to take a position. Our school districts have chosen not to take a position, and frankly, we think they should. What we're doing here is they're kind of leapfrogging our own community build-out plan. They got an initiative on the ballot that actually leapfrogged a city council and possibly a city measure that was going to be placed on the ballot to include SPA 1 and SPA 2, SPA 1 being on the east side of town. The plan for this parcel in our general plan is 583 ranchette estates and very low density housing. What they've done is they leaped ahead and used a clause in the general plan which allows them to increase the density because it wasn't defined. So they're quadrupling the size of this development on this parcel, and that's one of the biggest problems we have with it. All the things that come along with it, we're talking about the schools again and the students. I did notice they used a percentage to calculate how many students were going to be going to these schools in the 9212 report. But when we met with the Dana Eaton, the Brentwood Union School District superintendent, he was talking about 720 students coming into these schools. So, you know, it's what you look at. It's a difference in opinion, I guess. There also is an emergency service road or a service road on the other side of Liberty High School that could be used in an emergency. You're not going to tell me that you wouldn't engage that road if you had an emergency situation at those schools.
But that's Liberty, that's not Heritage.
I mean, yeah, you're right. It's
talking about
Heritage High School.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
But I meant Liberty Union High School District,
Right.
excuse me. So, so there is an emergency service road on the backside of there. This particular development is letting the market dictate how it's completed out. It's going to complete Balfour Road all the way to Deer Valley as traffic dictates. It's going to build out this development as the market dictates. That's part of the problems we have with this. This initiative will give them that control. They'll take the control out of Brentwood residents' hands.
Well, when you start talking about as traffic dictates, I've driven Balfour Road, getting on Highway 4. I mean, it's better now because it's wider, but still, there's major backlogs, you know, turning left to get toward downtown Antioch on the bypass. Won't this just add more traffic and make that worse?
Well, there was a traffic study done. It's in the 9212, and some of what's been purported out to the public has only been the initial findings, but not showing the improvements that will happen that are tied to this project. And it's not as arbitrary as, you know, when traffic dictates. There are things tied to certain number of building permits. For instance, the first part of Balfour Road and the American Avenue Loop, to make that full loop circle, will be done before the first home even has a shovel stuck to the ground. It will absolutely be done when the final map is approved, and they will go out there and they will do that first half of Balfour Road and American Avenue right away before they get a shovel in the ground to start building the other homes. Like I said, the other one, the second half of Balfour Road from the new intersection that'll be built out to Deer Valley Road, and some of the safety improvements to Deer Valley Road come into play and are contractually agreed to concurrent with either the commercial area coming forward in the project or the 1200th building permit. So that's an example of the different kinds of things that are set into this. And that's one of the beautiful things about doing a special planning area. Yes, there are concessions made here and there in trade for things that legally the city can't require in general, but give the city latitude to negotiate for greater benefits for the community, more things up front, things in advance of the way that the normal state laws and things would mandate for a general project. And so having this be a special planning area tied to, of course, the vote, which is the vote is, do we move the urban limit line? There are still so many pieces of this puzzle that are still able to be fine-tuned, like the roundabouts, you know, maybe those turn into full intersections. Those kinds of details, per the agreement, are still negotiable. The hard, fast things, the things that they have to provide in general, those are set in stone. But the beauty of the urban limit line measure is that this gives the residents of Brentwood a chance to vote. Do we bring it in under our control, or do we risk letting it go to Antioch? And we know from history that Antioch does take up the things that Brentwood rejects, and they do build on it, and it's not as good. Yet those kids still come to our schools. It's not the best scenario. The best scenario is for us to stay in control of that land and be able then, once we vote yes on the urban limit line being moved so that this land is in our control, is to then be able to go through the regular processes that are still LAFCO and the Planning Commission and the City Council to fine-tune things. But it should be understood by the residents that if they'll take the time to go through the 9212 and go by the subjects listed there and get answers to their questions, they're going to see that these amenities are set in stone. They're wonderful. They're $175 million in direct revenue for things like public services, road extension, fire, district staffing. So you talk about we have fire stations we can't keep open. There is going to be just initially $6.5 million dumped into building a fire station, $4.5 into operations, staffing, training, and equipment, and then after that, $1 to $1.5 million annually in perpetuity for a CFD district that's going to be formed there. All that money gets to go to the district as a whole to staff those stations. It's slated for salaries and staffing.
I'm having a problem envisioning the traffic nightmares of putting traffic circles on Balfour. I mean, come on. I mean,
well, I'm not a traffic engineer.
It's three lanes in each direction now. How would putting traffic circles make traffic better?
Yeah, I'd like to respond to several things that she said. So you have to remember that the urban limit line is our defense to hold that property as unincorporated as it is today. What the No on Measure L campaign envisions is that either we go forward with our own community build-out plan at such a time that we need to, which now we don't need to make any expansion outward whatsoever, or we use that and we make our urban limit lines permanent, which we have to do in 2026. We'll come up again for our urban limit line and keep that the community separator between Antioch and Brentwood. We know that last year, 10,000 Antioch voters signed to get an initiative passed, Let the Antioch Voters Decide, to hold their urban limit line at the northern side of this particular parcel. And the City Council of Antioch actually adopted their initiative. It did not have to go to a vote at that time. Of course, the Zika Ranch individual sued the City of Antioch, and now, of course, it has to be voted on in November of 2020. In the meantime, the urban limit line that they have is still in force until December 2020. We have a memo of understanding in place between the two cities that neither city will ask for sphere of influence or annexation of that parcel till 2022. So the Antioch thread, as you know, was presented in the 2010 election of Measure F, in which we were also opposed to, and those things never materialized. The other thing I wanted to add to that is in reading over the LAFCO 9-page letter that was sent to the city of Brentwood, they determined that this particular parcel was not in a prime development area because it's not near infill and transit adjacent development. And the Plan Bay area said that all urban growth boundaries are fixed till 2040 as far as they're concerned. Their municipal services review reviewed all 19 cities in March of this year and determined that no changes to Brentwood's sphere of influence were necessary, and they expected no sprawl development into open space or agricultural land till 2040.
If I remember correctly, isn't there some agriculture on that property now? Are somebody growing grapes or something there?
No, no grapes.
No. It's dry farm. Mm-hmm. There's about 3 months out of the year where the pasture there grows enough to feed about 3 cattle. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have any irrigation water rights. It doesn't have a well. It is not, people get confused with what protected open space is versus, farmland that's nothing's happening on anymore, but a few cows, a couple of months out of the year while the pasture is still growing and then it's dormant. This measure and this project would actually create protected open space in perpetuity to the tune of 1,700 acres. It's actually going to legally preserve and care for more acres than is going to be built on. And 225 acres of that are going to be done in dry farmland, turned into something more prime and irrigated agriculture, pardon me. And it actually will be, you know, grapes, olives, something to that effect, and it will actually be beautiful to look at on our borders and from Deer Valley Road and Balfour, as opposed to what it is now. And so it's actually going to bring in a lot. And there's, you know, again, a lot of talk about, is it time, is it time? Well, when is it time to fix our fire district? When is it time to protect our children and make them safe on their campuses? When is it time to balance these other things that this project will do?
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Kathy.
well, what I wanted to say
We only
about
have about 30 seconds.
about the
closing
protection
statements.
of the other additional 1,500 acres that they're touting. I mean, we feel that was a little bit of a backroom deal. I mean, it throws Brentwood under the bus for protecting 1,500 acres near Clayton for building out our 590 acres on this particular parcel. And the 225 acres that they're going to be saving will be, looks like it's going to be grapes and olive trees and some other things that, of course, the cost of that, maintaining that, is going to be passed on to the homeowners association.
Okay.
So I don't agree with saving 1,500 acres out of my town.
Well, just don't cut down any more cherry trees. I just love my cherries. Look, thank you to our panel for answering some of these very important questions. Each speaker now has 1 minute to make a closing argument, we'll call it. And I believe, Kathy, that's you.
Yeah, that's me first. So what I was going to say is the Ginocchio nuns and Save Mount Diablo, of all people, should recognize that Deer Valley was never intended for this type of build out. The plan actually removes Brentwood control by breaking our urban limit line and giving them control of the parcel. It quadruples the size intended for the parcel from ranch estates to a density, in some cases, as high as 30 units to an acre. It worsens our fire and emergency response times and throws money at the problem. We know that it almost does nothing to help our 88% of workers who are suffering on the freeways for viable work. And it develops 590 acres to save 225 and then claims to save 1,500 acres somewhere else in a backroom deal. No one else supported by loyal environmental advocacy groups, unions, and by thousands of intelligent, devoted Brentwood residents, who, by the way, are also business owners and city leaders. And they want to protect Brentwood's quality of life for the here and now and into the future. And by adding thousands of homes, you can't solve challenges within. And we say,
thank you. Thank you.
Vote
Thank you.
no.
Thank you. Thank you. And that,
All right.
1
well,
minute. 1 minute-ish.
The proponents of Measure L do believe that, that this funding can make a huge difference for Brentwood. Cities don't have money just growing on trees. Schools don't have money growing on trees. These things that will be addressed, will be taken care of, that will be built out and enhanced and made better for our community only come through development. And anybody who's served on boards and things for government, cities, jurisdictions, they understand those things. We understand that this is long awaited for, to have a fire district who can actually fill our stations with staffing and take care of us. It's long awaited that we have safety for our children on their school campuses. It's long awaited that we have these other things that will come to Brentwood. The homes alone will reduce the tax bill for other Brentwood residents paying the school bonds. That's something that I can elaborate more on, but adding these homes to Brentwood will make it a better place.
Thank you so much. That concludes our forum for Measure L initiative on the Brentwood ballot on November 5th special election. Once again, our speakers, Annette Beckstrand and Kathy Griffin, thank you very much.
Thank you for having
For more
us.
information on the measure, visit the website votersedge.org. To view this broadcast online, go to www.cocovote.us. The Elections Office would also like to remind voters to go online to check your voter registration status to make sure you're registered and consider whether you want to get your ballot in the mail. I'm Bob Butler from KCBS Radio. Thank you for watching, and don't forget, vote on November 5th.